Hello and welcome back to LDF-Designs. In today's video, I am going to put together a little collage and watercolor piece on this watercolor paper, and then I'm going to finish it off with an encaustic finish. So I've gathered up some of my rust-colored papers and some different papers with print on them. I've got some watercolors. That is just some acrylic medium down there, and I've got a little bit of pre-mixed drywall compound with a little bit of paint color in it that I used on a previous project. So I'm going to try that in a very small thin amount on this paper and see if it holds it. I've got these taped off so that it's double in the center. I've made that mistake before where I did not tape it off correctly, and the pieces, once I were done with them, were not a typical sized piece. So I did remember this time to go ahead and do the double in the middle so that if I were to cut them apart or mat them, I will have enough space in between all of the paintings. So at this point, I'm just going to start off by using that matte medium and just attach my ephemera pieces on. And then I will go ahead and start adding some of the color. I did take my heat gun every so often and kind of dry the different layers that I was applying, just to make sure I didn't get that drywall compound and paint mixture mixed up with my other paints. It took a while for it to dry all the way through, and I did let this set overnight before I added the encaustic. I do have this video sped up just about as fast as I can go. A lot of the video is just me kind of creating these pieces, and I know some people like to watch the whole process and some people don't, so I just have it all on there just sped up. I did try to slow it down in a few areas where maybe I was wanting to show you something or talk through a procedure. So at this point, I went ahead and pulled out some of the Sumi ink that I have. I thought it would be fun to add just a darker tone to these paintings. You do have to be careful with this ink when you're using it in this format, because it can kind of overtake everything. So I had a teeny tiny little brush and tried to go ahead and get that dried, because the water will reactivate it if I add any water to it. At this point, I tried to go ahead and flip the whole piece upside down to see if I wanted to do things differently in this direction. I think it can be very helpful to move the pieces around a little bit when you're working on them, just so you can see them at every angle. Sometimes I'll work an entire piece and then find out that it looks much better upside down, and maybe that's the way I'll orient it when I'm done. So it's just always a good idea to kind of flip them around and look at them from different directions. So I let this dry overnight, and the next morning I came back and wanted to add just a little bit of blue to it. So I used my oil pastel and added just a few more marks with that and touched up a little bit of the ink area. Once I let that dry, I went ahead and took my heat gun to it, A, to warm the surface up, but B, to also just to make sure that that ink was good and dry before I started to apply the encaustic, which is what I will do in just a moment. Also, I did go ahead and try to tape this down. Sometimes when you're working on the watercolor paper, it will get a little bit warpy or warp a little bit, and then the encaustic wants to pool in the lower areas, and then it becomes uneven. So it can be challenging sometimes to keep it flat. What I found was that my tape didn't really want to stick to my silicone mat very well, so it sort of worked. I was able to keep it as flat as I could, but was a little bit of a struggle as I worked on the piece. Of course, I like to have a lot of texture usually on my encaustic pieces, so at this point I put 2 or 3 layers of the clear encaustic on, and now I'm just creating some texture. And then I'm going to go back and create a color using some oil paints and use that to fill in all of my different texture. Sometimes I think one of the more satisfying parts of creating pieces like this is pulling the tape off. So for those of you that like to watch that, I do have the entirety of that coming up here in just a moment. But you will see pictures of this over on my Instagram page. At this point, I haven't added anything else to it, but I may add a little bit of gold to it somewhere. I haven't quite decided. Gonna sit with it here for a little bit before I make that decision, but if I do, I will certainly do that and then take pictures and put those over on my Instagram page. So I hope you enjoyed this today and a little bit something different. I'll probably get this matted so that it can go in a frame, or I may cut them apart and have 4 individuals pieces. Haven't quite decided. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Feel free to leave me a comment, hit the like button, certainly hit the subscribe if you've not done so already. I really do appreciate hearing from you guys, and just really tickled that you guys like to watch my work sometimes. So thank you for watching.